we are going to study about the conditional statements, and our success criteria is to write the conditional statements in the form of if P then Q, also to convert the conditional statements into converse, inverse and the contrapositive statements. Let's study about the four important statements that are conditional statements, converse, inverse and contrapositive statements. The most important thing is that if and then, if we are trying to make a connection between the two situations by writing if and then they are said to be the conditional statements. So let's suppose the first statement or the first condition is P and the second condition is Q. And we make the relationship by writing if and then and relate them and write it as a one statement, then that statement is said to be the conditional statement. So how can we write if P then Q as it is written in the third column? Now if we interchange the places of their places, yani P is replaced by the Q and the situation of the P is replaced by the Q, then in that case, whereas the if and then never change their places, then that statement is said to be the converse statement. Now, inverse is actually the negation of the conditional statement. So if we say that if not P, then not Q, by adding the word not to the P statement and the Q statement will make it as an inverse statement. And similarly, the contrapositive is the negation of the converse statement. So what does it mean? That adding the not in the converse statement will make it the contrapositive statements, which means if not Q, then not P. Let's try to understand by taking a real example. A label on the container reads, if you are not 100% satisfied, we will refund your purchase price. Now the first thing is, before we convert this equation, this statement into converse, inverse and contrapositive, let's first of all write it as a conditional statement. So the most important elements of the conditional statements are if, and in the middle there should be a then. So I can see if very clearly. If you are not 100% satisfied, then what will happen? So I have to add then over here. Then we will refund your purchase price. Now keep the if as it is and then at their own places, but change the places of these two statements. So the statement which is written after the if, it is actually the P, and I am underlining it by a black pen. Whereas the statement after the N, then it is your second statement, that is Q. Interchanging the two places will change it into converse statement. So what I am going to do, after the if, I will write if we will refund your purchase price, which means whatever I wrote with the red pen, whatever I underlined with the red pen is going to come after the if. Then what will happen? Then you are not 100% satisfied. So I am not making anything, just I have to keep the F and then at the same places and interchange the places of these two statements. Now inverse is actually the negation of a conditional statement. So I have to add the not, and if there is already a not, then I have to remove it. So and keep the if and then at their own places. So just convert it. How do we write? That if it's already the negation, you are not. So I have to make a negation. So I cannot write not not. I will just remove the not and make it as an affirmative statement. What does it mean? It means if you are 100% satisfied, then we will not refund your purchase price. So the first statement become affirmative and the second become negation. So it means wherever there was a not, I am removing. Where there was no not, I am adding it. So inverse is the negation of my conditional statement. Now what is contrapositive? The contrapositive is actually the negation of my converse statement. So how do I write it? I will write it as if we will not refund your purchase price, then you are 100% satisfied. So this is how we are going to write or mention our statements. Let's take another example. A sign in a restaurant reads, if it is your birthday, you get free ice cream. So what you are going to do? First of all, you have to add then in order to convert it into conditional statement. So I can write it, if it is your birthday, then you get free ice cream. Now, as we said that first of all, underline the two statements, one statement after the if and the other statement after the then. First statement after the if is P and the other statement is Q. Now in order to write the converse statement, we will write if and then as it is. Now what we have to write? We have to convert their place. We have to interchange their places. What we will write? If you get free ice cream, then it is your birthday. Now let's try to make the inverse. So inverse actually it is the negation of our conditional statement. So what we can write it here, that if it is not your birthday, then you do not get free ice cream. So the places of P and Q stay as it is, only you have to add the not. So the contrapositive statement will be the negation of our converse statement. Means if not Q, then not P. So how can we write? If you do not get the free ice cream, then it is not your birthday. Next question. A movie poster says, if you like action movies, then you will like this movie. So it is already written as the conditional statement. The first thing is I am going to underline the two statements. The first statement which is written after the if and the second statement which is written after the then. In order to write the converse statement, I will keep the places of if and then, whereas I will interchange the statements. Means if you will like this movie, then you like action movies. Now inverse is the negation of the conditional equation. So you have to add the not. If you do not like action movies, then you will not like this movie. And as I just said, contrapositive is the negation of the converse statement. So how can we write that if you will not like this movie, then you will not like the action movies. Another example, a sign at an amusement park ride says, if you are at least 4 feet tall, then you are allowed to take this right. So I wrote the then after the comma in order to make it a conditional statement. Now pause the video and write the converse, inverse and contrapositive statements and then check it again with me. So for the conversive statement, we have to interchange the places of the statements, keeping the if and then at their own places. So we will say, if you are allowed to take this right, then you are at least 4 feet tall. As we said, inverse is the negation of conditional statement. So we are going to just add the not. If you are not at least, if you are not at least 4 feet tall, then you are not allowed to take this ride. Now, contrapositive is the negation of our converse statement. Yani if not Q, then not P. So what we will write? That if you are not allowed to take this ride, then you are not at least 4 feet tall. Now let's try to do the other part of the statement. Now they might ask you identify the hypothesis and conclusion from the given conditional statement. So actually any equation which is written in the form of conditional statement consists of the two statements, right? A statement which is written after the if and the other statement which is written after the then. So the statement that is written after if is said to be the hypothesis, that is the fact, and the conclusion or the resultant statement is written after the Q. So just you have to identify. So if I write here if P then Q. So what is my hypothesis? P is my hypothesis. For identifying the hypothesis, do not use the words if or then. So the P is my hypothesis. And what is Q? Q is the statement which is written after the then and it is said to be conclusion. Do not change their places by saying that it doesn't make the sense. So hypothesis should be the Q and P has to be the conclusion because the equation is not making the sense. No. Whatever it is written, whether it makes the sense or it doesn't make the sense, the statement after the P after the if is your hypothesis and the statement after the then is your conclusion. Keeping this in mind, let's try to solve few examples. So we have to identify the hypothesis and conclusion. Let's underline the hypothesis by red and the conclusion by blue. So if it rains, then the ground gets wet. So what is the hypothesis? It rains. And what is the conclusion after the then? That is the ground gets wet. This is our hypothesis and this is our conclusion. Now next, if you study hard, then you will get good grades. So hypothesis is you study hard. That is our hypothesis. And what is coming after the then? That means you will get good grades is my conclusion. Let's do another one. If a number is divisible by 2, then it is even. So what statement is written after the if? A number is divisible by 2. And what statement is written? Which statement is written after the then? It is even. Next. If you eat too much candy, then you might get a toothache. So the statement after the if, it is my hypothesis, and the statement after the then is my conclusion. Now pause the video and do the remaining two statements. Identify the conclusion and the hypothesis from them and then check your answer. So if the temperature drops below freezing, then water will freeze. So my hypothesis is the temperature drops below freezing and conclusion is water will freeze. Next statement, if you exercise regularly, then you will improve your health. So my hypothesis is you exercise regularly. And my conclusion is you will improve your health.